Shilajit is one of the world's most popular superfoods. It's loaded with over 40 trace minerals, fulvic and humic acids, antioxidants, and more. It's a resin or tar-like substance that seeps out of the rocks of the Himalayas at extremely high altitudes, formed from centuries worth of decomposing plant matter and microbial activity, distilled by pure rainwater and pressurized by tons of mountainous rock. In a way, you could say it's kind of like the lifeblood of the earth itself, and we can use it to enhance our daily lives by absorbing its power into our body cells. However, if you've tried Shilajit in the past, you know it's true when I say it does not taste good, and that almost seems like an understatement. Some people say it's like licking an old used ashtray, and some people get a little more descriptive than that. Let your imagination run wild. It's pretty bad. But one thing is for certain. I've tried tons of Shilajit products, and no one has ever been able to cover the flavor, let alone make it taste good, until now. My friends at Organifi just released these new Shilajit gummies, and they actually taste good. They deliver 250 milligrams per serving of pure Himalayan Shilajit. Shilajit's benefits include supporting energy production, healthy hormone levels, performance and recovery, promoting collagen synthesis and heart health, increasing cellular energy, and decreasing fatigue. Shilajit has become super trendy in the superfoods and holistic health world for obvious reasons, and people have long been desperate for a solution to the flavor problem. That's why in the few months since Organifi released these, they've already sold out several times. Visit Organifi.com/TWF. That's Organifi.com/TWF, or just head to the show notes. Take a look at their whole collection, and when you go to check out, use promo code TWF. That code is going to give you a 20% discount on all of their products, and they have a lot of amazing products other than their Shilajit gummies. Find out how these superfoods can help you on your health journey today with Organifi. For archetype, purpose, and business coach, author, coach trainer, and founder of the House of Free Will in the private domain, Beth Martens, her calling is a life or death thing. After a decade as a corporate VP in her family's firm, 8 trips to India, and a 3-year battle with cancer 20 years ago, she used archetypes to save her life. Today, she helps truth lovers find their sacred purpose, be valued for their life's work, and survive the ordeals of their hero's journey. As a recovering feminist, she helps strong men and women to survive their missions and hosts the King Heroes Journey podcast to highlight important leaders, entrepreneurs, movement makers, law experts, and purveyors of the truth. I've been looking forward to this conversation since Anarchapulco, when I think that's like when I said I'd like to interview you for my podcast, right? That was the moment, or was it after that? I don't really remember.
It was before that, but that's our first meeting.
Okay, that was our first meeting in person.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here in Texas with me.
It's really so great to be here, Alec. I'm super
excited. Are you not
excited.
like super hot though, especially coming from Canada?
It's a little bit hotter here, but we get this hot, so it's not a worry for me. And my son is more of a, he would like to live in California, although to tell you the truth, Texas is his exact location, and that's why I brought him on the trip.
Okay.
Yeah, awesome. we want to live here. Today we were talking over breakfast at the Sweet Lemon. Thanks for that great recommendation. And he's like, yeah, no, we want to live here. This
really?
Is where we want.
So
yeah.
you would consider like moving here?
Oh yeah.
That's awesome, because there's a lot of really, really awesome people here. Yeah. Once a month, a few of us have. I'm talking like 20 to 30 people, and we don't advertise it. We have a common law gathering at my friend's house, my friend that I'm not going to name names, where we all just discuss the best solutions and best remedies and best approaches to living a life in the private, it's pretty incredible, because it's very rare that without advertising it, you will find that many people in one area who are that interested and willing to dive deep. So I just feel so blessed to be here, but I'm more of a guy who tends to like living in a place where it's a little bit drier and cooler. So like that's in the summertime here, I struggle so much, but it's all good. My wife loves it hot and humid, so we're kind of opposites on that. But
yeah, women are like that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I want to start with your journey, your heroine's journey, if you will. Starting with just your background and going into developing cancer, your 8 trips to India, et cetera, et cetera. Just let's start there, because I know that leads right into archetypes and so many other threads that we could pull on.
Yeah, so I was born and raised into a family business, and I never really knew anything except that working for the man 9 to 5 wasn't good. It didn't look good on my parents. They didn't like it, although my mom hadn't worked at that time. But my dad bailed from that workaday life to take a huge risk and massive responsibility and start a firm that grew from being just my mom and dad to 30 people in its highlight. They were one of the top 3 firms in Winnipeg at that time. And so I always worked for them. I enjoyed making money as a child. That seemed fun to me. By 10 years old, I'm like stuffing envelopes and doing things for them. And then after I graduated university in anthropology with the gold medal, by the way, so you think I'm super qualified for all kinds of things at that point, but really nothing professionally, right? And I thought, okay, well, I want to go back to India because I developed a taste for the Eastern arts and
where did you get that taste?
Religion. Where did I get that? Well, just by fluke in university, I ended up taking a course in meditation from a guy who lived in India. And it was one of those lining up things that I never ever had an interest in India, but all of a sudden I'm taking courses and then starting to meditate. And I wanted to go overseas, but I didn't want to just pack my bags and get on a plane. So I joined up with a group called Canadian Crossroads International. And they had placed me in Nepal, which seemed really close to India. It's not that close. It's from the prairie perspective where I come from.
It's like California is close to Florida.
Yeah. It's like it's all up, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
you're talking about topography there. And so I went and did that placement, and I did make my way to India, come hell or high water, a lot of trains, planes, and automobiles going on there. And then I fell in love with the practices, mostly, I won't say religions of India, but, meditation and the path to enlightenment. So
were you steeped in a lot of like yogic Vedic traditions or Hindu traditions? What were you, like, which thread of religions or spiritual journeys were you interested in at that point in time?
Yeah, yogic, Vedic, bhakti yoga, a lot of mantras and devotional yoga, but it was also Gyan yoga, using the mind and tracing your way back to who you are in that logical way. In the end, I've always been a take a little something from everything and put it together my way. When in the years when I taught yoga, people would ask me what kind of yoga, or they'd ask people what kind of yoga does Beth do, and they would say Beth yoga.
Beth yoga.
Because I just wanted the best of everything and have no particular loyalty to any one tradition. I'm loyal to freedom.
Got it. Okay, so from there, that was your. Are we talking sort of condensed? That was multiple trips to India. That was your experience, or was that just your first one? And yeah, I guess let's start there.
Yeah. So the first time I went for 11 months, and when I got back, all I wanted to do was go back to India. I thought I wanted to live there. But at that time, having just freshly graduated, I didn't have my independence. I didn't have a financial means. So that's when I decided I was going to go to work with my family's firm so I could make the money to go to India every year. And that's exactly what I did. And my dad was amazing. He's a total mentor to me. He trained me from zero up. And it was the most stressful mentorship of my entire life because he just threw me in at the deep end and, oh, you're an account executive now. Oh, you're a vice president now. And gave me all the responsibility and suffered the mistakes that I made because there's, when you're a beginner, you're going to make mistakes. And I loved the work. I love business. I think just because of my upbringing, it represented some kind of again, freedom, flexibility, ability to make your own choices. And the main work was communication. So some advertising, a little bit of advertising, but a lot of PR and, getting people's attention. I did media relations and event management. And so there was enough variety that I really liked the work. But the corporate environment is just so heartless and cold and evil in its roots. And it didn't take long for me to realize that there was no real purpose behind anything that I did. Mm-hmm. And I was working so hard And so it became like, I'm only doing this for two reasons. One for the financial independence, but two, very much out of loyalty to my family. They had been hit very hard in the 90s recession and went from a firm of 30 people down to 3 people. And that was like me, my dad, and although my mom had a sister company that was still quite thriving, and an assistant at the time. So I felt like, yeah, they've served me all my life. Now I can give back and help them. And it was a little bit foreshadowing to the nurturer archetype we're going to talk about later. But I gave my all for that no cause at all, and nickel and dimed myself out of my health, so that I was diagnosed in 1999 with a stage 4 lymphoma. That was it came to an emergency, and I always treat this like a cautionary tale. I knew that things weren't going well, and I knew I was praying to God every single day for a way out. And this has been a huge life lesson for me, because when you pray to God for a way out, but you don't just leave, then it's going to be some kind of a breakdown. And that's not necessarily the graceful path that you'd want to take. So I tell this story in my book also about, I thought maybe I was a hypochondriac and I'm just looking for my escape hatch. And I went to get a diagnosis of a tumor, or like a lump in my clavicle. Came back from the surgeon and left the surgeon's office with that diagnosis of the lymphoma, and I never went back. That was my ticket out.
Were you already aware of the problems with allopathic medicine at that point?
Yes, I had been looking especially into Ayurvedic medicine and herbal medicine, and so very strong interest in all of that. More of a like a hobby. I didn't know I was going to use it to apply to my life situation. And so, yeah, I had a lot of trepidation. I had so much trepidation about the medical system that I tried to avoid it completely. And so I tried all kinds of things. I'm a classic self-experimenter, so I do a lot of things on myself. I think we're in good company there, eh? A lot of our friends.
I do so many experiments on myself. Not those ones, though, not the poisonous ones, but yes, yeah, we could go down a rabbit hole on that. But yes, I experiment on myself to see what works for me, to see what works best for me, rather than just taking what someone else says at face value. Even the more natural leaning practitioners and so-called experts, like I never take anything at face value. I apply it to my life and see if it works. And if it does, and I keep doing it. And if not, I don't. Right.
And then you take a risk when you do that. Have you ever made experiments that didn't go well?
Yes.
Because that's what happened to me. I went too far on my own, and by the time I started getting help, I actually moved across the country to Vancouver to work with a naturopath who people came from all over the world to see him. And we had some good results for a time, and then it started plateauing, and the next thing you know, I'm going down again. And it was actually the naturopath that recommended I go back and do all the allopathic medicine.
Wow.
Because he said, you know what? Because Hodgkin's lymphoma is not considered a deadly disease until the second diagnosis, which came down later for me. And so he's like, go home, do radiation. It turned into about 18 months of chemotherapy, like really intense, brutal, near dead. I had a near-death experience doing the chemotherapy, and actually went into remission from the near-death experience, which was amazing. A huge turnaround, really. Can we
touch there a little bit on the near-death experience? Are you willing to share some of those details? Okay, cool.
Yeah. I was, in fact, I'm in the process of making my audiobook out of my book. And last night, because I didn't have Wi-Fi, I was working on my audiobook, which is even better. And I went through the chapter where I worked very hard. It was a very difficult piece to write, I have to admit, as an artistic piece. It came out a lot of different awkward ways, but from my own inner experience, the moment by moment, and things just progressively got worse. Chemotherapy is something that accumulates in its damage. So you go the first time, you're like, oh, no big deal. I can live my normal life. And the second time, a little more damage. Third time, a little more damage. Every 2 weeks, boom, you're going down. Got to the point I couldn't walk a block anymore. It made such a huge reaction of some kind in my hands. They swelled up. I couldn't use my hands anymore. Couldn't do anything for myself anymore. Digestion was over. I was always going but I can still sit up and sing. And then there was the day I can't sit up and I can't sing anymore. It was too much pressure on my body. Deep breathing was too much pressure on my body because the chemotherapy literally is an inner attack. It takes away all of your mucous membranes. And you don't know how much you love your mucous membranes until they're gone. Just want you to know. It was craziness. And so I'm laying there and the sun's going down. And I think, I think I'm in trouble right now. And I could call for help like I have been all the other time. Gonna make myself cry again, like I did last night, literally weeping, reading my own work. And I thought, you know what? This is it. I've been fighting with death for more than 18 months now. And I'm just going to stop this fight. I can't do this anymore. So I allowed myself to go into what I thought was death. And there was a wall of blackness. And not a typical near-death experience, like with the lights at the end of the tunnel and that kind of thing, but just a perfectly still, peaceful, black nothing. And on the other side of the blackness was a huge surprise to me, joy.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow, how fancy is this? And I spent a great deal of time into the night hours in that place. And I learned some very important things about myself in the process. Number one, that I'm here for a purpose, that life is not meaningless. And my life has a particular trajectory. It didn't come in like, oh, here's X, Y, Z, A, B, C, what you're going to be doing. It just was the code of it. Like there's something that I was aware of that I hadn't been aware of before. I knew that if I died at that time, that purpose would not go away. It was a contract. And I knew that if I was to die, that I was just going to have to come back and do it all over again. And the last thing that I realized is that there was no purpose in a vacuum. And it's not me that has a purpose. If I'm just, I would often say alone in my living room, there's no purpose to that. It's how you are connected to humanity and your humanity in particular. So that's been a lifelong principle since then that I've operated by. Finding your people is so important. It's like a cliche, find your tribe. But you can't have purpose without your tribe. And yeah. So all of that realized in that moment, I came out of it. I felt healed. A lot of my body functions didn't come back. It wasn't that kind of, but I had a knowing that something had happened. I asked the doctors for a test. They revealed I was in remission. And so I went on my way. They recommended more chemo. And I'm like, no, dude, I'm just going to take it from here. Thanks anyway. And then it took another, over a year. I was still recovering, getting my strength back, trying to walk that whole block. And then I started to have signs again that were negative. I could tell. They tested me a bunch of times, didn't find anything. But I knew in the inner world that things weren't right. And finally, I got the second diagnosis. And they told me the second diagnosis means you are going to die, 100% sure. And then they recommended, I should say. It wasn't an offer. It was an offer, but really a recommendation. The other way around, actually, really an offer for a stem cell transplant. And I don't know if you know anyone who's done a stem cell transplant, but it is an absolutely brutal event where they give you enough chemotherapy so you almost die, and then your bone marrow produces stem cells, and then they really gorily harvest that from your bone marrow and give it back to you in hopes that you survive. And half the people die doing it. One half.
Oh my goodness.
So it was like, brutal death to my body and soul, or take my chances. And that was a real moment of truth when I started looking at where I was motivated from. And this became another core principle to live from, because I was doing all the right things, right? I completely changed my diet. I was doing a raw food diet at the time, juicing like crazy. I was meditating. I was doing yoga. I was getting Reiki and doing alternative therapies like ozone therapy and a bunch of really a lot of stuff, thousands of dollars in supplements every month, working with anybody I could, counselors, whoever I could relate to, I was working with them. And at the end of the day, here I am still a dying person. So I realized that it's not just about getting your lifestyle right. That yes, there are factors there and they influence you. But what I saw is that I was running from death, using all the best things with this hidden motive that I didn't want to die.
And this is after your near-death experience, right? The second one? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
At this point, how many times had you been to India?
8.
So at this point, you had already been 8 times.
Yeah.
So you say that you were running from death. Can you elaborate on that more? Because I guess I would imagine going to India 8 times and having this near-death experience, it's like, let's ask this first. Was there some element of you that was chasing that feeling that you had felt sitting in meditation or you had felt on your near-death experience that was sort of escaping reality, sort of subconsciously inviting a death process because you were not wanting to be in your body in reality at some level, but wanted to, for lack of a better term, ascend out of it or be somewhere else consciously?
Yeah, you're jumping right to the punchline.
Okay.
That's exactly it.
I promise she did not tee that up for me. That was where that came from. But no, seriously, because like that's what came up for me as you're telling this story, is I could see where that would be the case, especially like I've interviewed a guy who had an after-death experience, and he said one of the hardest, he had after death, which is, like subset of the near-death experience community that was legally pronounced dead. And he said the hardest part was integrating back here after it, especially because of how much love, just the tremendous love, in your case, joy that he felt there and knowing that he is eternal and all these things, then having to reintegrate in his body. So I could imagine you being in India 8 times, feeling similar feelings, right? And then you talked about how you wanted to just go back to India and not be where you were and then have this near-death experience. So yeah, that's what came up for me. So please expand upon that.
Yeah, the whole thing made me realize that I had used my spiritual practice to get out of my human experience. And it turned out to be a bad idea because when I was out, things were happening here that needed my time and attention. Mm-hmm. So I literally was not aware. Every time I would get a signal from my body or my soul, and my cure for it, my cure was to get out. And that's how I survived, say the first months of chemotherapy was just to vacate. And I could be in bliss. I could be, in this very high state, and people were saying that I was glowing and this kind of thing. So there was definitely an energetic frequency kind of thing going on. But having that awareness, I got so sick doing this. I won't say it's the cause of it because not everybody does their meditation to get out. Some will do it to get in. So that's very good. And but from my perspective and the way I was using it was completely wrong. Mm-hmm. And so it was a huge U-turn to in the actual healing of it. It was to come back to myself and have my full attention in a much more embodied way rather than ascended way.
Where did that epiphany come from? Like, how did you realize that you were engaging with these practices, these yogic traditions, and failing to integrate your near-death experience in such a way that you were using it to escape?
Well, the diagnosis.
Just the diagnosis itself.
It was 8 years of doing everything right, again, eating great and the yoga and everything. Before that, you think, well, I just have to do everything right. Mm-hmm. That's just have to be vigilant enough and learn every little thing and have all the right behavior. And then, no, it's not that. It's the inner motive. Where are you coming from? And this is how I help people today, is to discover what's in the unconscious that you're not aware of. And it's a journey into the unconscious that you don't necessarily make through meditation, because it's got to be a conscious choice that I allow myself to see and feel something that I don't see and feel. And this was the big thing in the second round of being sick, when I'm going like, okay, what? I need to solve this mystery big time. And that's when I was guided to work with Archetypes. I found Carolyn Miss's book, The Sacred Contracts, on the shelf. She had just published. I didn't know what it was about. I knew I liked her, so I just grabbed it, and I need this book, and I'm reading it. And I was like, I think my keys are here, because it introduced to me, I'd already studied about archetypes in university, but never to practical use, and saw how the two expressions of an archetype, I mean, they're multi and many, many nuances, but two primary ones are conscious and unconscious. And they are like night and day. So the conscious expression of the archetype, when you're using it and aware that you're using it, is a gift, and many gifts. And I will say superpower, not to be too ridiculous about it, but it gives you a lot of wind in your sails. And then the shadow side being the one that will act like your enemy, like something is killing you that's not you. Like you've got an actual killer in the zone. So there were two primary archetypes that I found. One I was aware of much later, though I know now how much it was at play at that time. The one I was able to recognize was the rebel. And so we have a lot of rebel friends, right? They don't put the mask on when someone tells them to do that. And they don't jam poison in their body because someone told them to do that. They're like, no. And no was my first word, right? So I had a lot of experience balking the system, coming up against authority. And there's goodness in that, but it got me into so much trouble in my life. And, I was a runaway teenager. I was thrown in jail, only a night. Okay. I stole a car. I was in the bars since I was 14 years old, just looked a little older than I was at the time. Always just doing the thing I wasn't supposed to be doing. And it was a constant source of trouble for me. Legally, luckily I did all that stuff before I turned 18, never ended up with a record. But, my family put them through incredible amounts of stress. My sister beat the crap out of me one time. I ruined her graduation. Everyone's supposed to be celebrating her life, and I show up in the cop car. Oh, and, just like, and so I got tired of it. I felt beat up by my own rebel nature. And I said, okay, that's it, rebel nature. You're over. We're done. I'm having a divorce with you. I'm going to go be a normal person. I'm going to work. I'm going to be a citizen. I'm going to pay taxes. I'm going to, get my gold medal in anthropologies to prove what a good person I am. And all I had done was to suppress that archetype. Because when you X out an archetype, it doesn't go away. It's a hard wiring in your system. It's a calling. It's God calling you, right? So when I suppressed it, then it turns into my enemy, and it becomes all the shadow expressions of that rebel archetype, which is rebel without a cause, and fighting for no reason. Could be fighting because you're bored, fighting because you don't want to work. And so that all, so I had to contend with that, and my dad had to contend with that in my work. I was always like, I want to go to the folk festival over there, so I'm going to be a little short on work today. He's like, no, you're not. So that was a massive discovery. And it was, at the same time, I had this awareness that I was motivated by this fear inside myself of dying and being sick. And there I was sick and I was dying. So I'm like, wow, that fear isn't working for me, right? It got me into that exact circumstance. And so when I saw the fear, more importantly, when I felt the fear, because fear is one of those hot potatoes. You don't want to feel it, and you do suppress it. So then I allowed my awareness to be fully consumed, to see the fear. The worst feeling you can ever have in your entire human experience is the fear of dying. Most people I talk to, and you might even want to tell me this right now, that you have no fear of dying. And it's just not true. We would be utterly uncontrollable without that fear. And so by feeling it, by recognizing it, by seeing it, at this time I didn't have the language for it, but by recognizing it as a program, I could make a new choice about that. I'm no longer going to run from fear. I'm going to move forward consciously with love. And from that, I was able to make that choice not to do the stem cell transplant. Wow. And going to that appointment, I was terrified of the appointment because every single time I tried to say no to their treatments, they would just yell at me, you're going to die, you're going to die. Like this constant, it was just, oh my. So I was pretty sure, I was like, I'm waiting for the big retaliation.
But you'd already engaged with feeling the fear of death anyway. So was that adding to the fear? Is like, no, I've already accepted and engaged with this fear that I have inside me. So when they're telling you that, you're going to die.
Well, I was definitely preparing myself for this exact response. They didn't say it. They're like, okay.
Wow.
Yeah, literally. I'm like, what? I was ready to fight you.
Yeah.
And I actually ended up meeting that oncologist on the ward where I had been receiving treatments about 6 months in advance. And I got one of the first jobs I got myself after surviving was to be a musician in various hospitals playing music for people that are not well. So there I am back in the same ward at the Health Sciences Center, and I'm playing my guitar and singing like a bird. And my Dr. Rubinger walks by and I'm like, hey, Dr. Rubinger. And he's like, yeah. I went, it's me, Beth Martens. He's like, yeah. And you could see him just glaze over.
Wow.
And I'm like, I survived. He's like, yeah, I got to go.
What?
Yeah.
What do you think that was? Was it like cognitive dissonance that he didn't want to face, that you just said no to the treatment that he was recommending? What was the reason?
I mean, within another year, he killed himself. I learned he had committed suicide. So, all I can say is he must have been desperately unhappy
all day. Yeah.
in his role, always having to give people a death sentence. The treatments were zero guarantee. He was harming people, maybe unconsciously understood his role in that. I don't know, but desperately unhappy.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was the major turning point for me when I learned to exercise the moving forward from love to recognize, to be vigilant and allow myself to feel fear and the fear of dying. You could say, oh yeah, I got past that. And it's not like that either because the programming is multi-layered and comes up in higher frequencies, harder to recognize frequencies. And that's one of the problems with using ascension as a path to not freedom.
Yeah.
Because you don't see yourself anymore. Everybody else might see your problems, but you don't see them anymore.
I want to get there. I want to touch on what you're talking about with feeling the fear in practical, sort of intimate terms. Can you describe at that time what that looked like for you to really engage with that fear of death?
Yeah, so the most important skill anybody could ever develop in their entire life is to see the difference between suppression and release. So we trick ourselves and we don't want to feel the fear. It's not a pleasant experience, right? It is, the experience is like you're being harmed. And the fear of dying specifically, like fear is the emotion, the fear of dying is the program that is much more deeply rooted under the emotion. And when you feel the program, it's like you are dying. So I was very familiar with it at that point. It had come up. I couldn't really suppress it to the degree that I was able while I was a more well person. All of a sudden, that's why I needed to surrender to death because I couldn't get it out of my experience anymore. And this is rooted in the work of Lester Levinson. I wanted to just give him credit. He's not alive anymore. But he was the one that identified that when you fear dying, you feel like you're dying, but that's not death. So we mistake it, that experience of dying, and no one wants to feel like that. It's not even just a preference. It's like it comes up, and I'm still in that place, very much working with it on a daily basis. And when you feel it, it's like, wow, right? It's a showstopper. And that's your first step. So when you just allow it, rather than employing the AI program of resistance and say no to it, right? When you say no to anything, it listens to you, right? You tell your body to stop this or that and suppress it. It's like, okay, it's not what's good for you, but I'll do that, right? And so that was the big discovery that this is our operating system and it's ready for our instructions at any moment. The only problem is that the majority of our instructions come unconsciously. And so the program, you're saying, I'm going to die, and it's going like, okay, all right, this is not what I want for you. And Yeah. So then the feeling of it, the experience, it's really incredibly simple. It's just difficult to see and to feel. And once you find it, you see it, and then you decide in the system of coaching that I both use and train people in. It's a matter of questions like, you want to continue holding on to that program, or would you rather be free? Could you want your freedom more than you even want to survive right now? Is one of the key questions. And then it's a no-brainer. It's like, yeah, I want freedom. I know I'm not going to, as a body, live forever. So that's not even a good thing to want. And so I choose freedom. And in that, when you tell your system that you choose freedom and you give it permission, you say, it's not a script, by the way. I don't recommend scripts because your system becomes habituated to any form of communication, and it learns like, oh, I know your trick. I'm not going to let that work. Everything works for a time, and then you have to get really organic with it and really in the moment and really present. And then you speak with loving kindness. Again, if you say, I hate you, get away, or I hate you, release. Like, nope, it actually gets stronger. It comes in closer to you. So you have to learn how to be very soft and loving and warm and kind with your programs. And once it says like, you're okay, you can just go to sleep. I've got this handled actually. I'm going to take care of both of us now, and you're free to go. You're free to release. You're free to just be. So these are all actually metaphors. There's nothing that I can put my fingers on that is that words could describe, but all the metaphors have worked for people. To say the word release, to say the word let go, to say the word freedom, all the indescribable kind of things.
It's pointing to a deeper sort of feeling that is hard to put words to, that is unique to the individual, I'd imagine, right?
Right. And it's a skill that everybody has. So I was asked in a training I recently did, can you give us just like the short thing about letting go? And the short thing is that if you look through your life, you see that the thing that you were mad about, or the person you were sad about, or the loss that you were despairing about, and you check now, do I have that? No. Now, some might be unconscious because we do have the way to pocket things off, just like a tumor. You put things off into a certain place of your consciousness. And, but you naturally let go. And you look at all the body functions that when you work out, you sweat and your body lets go of toxins. And your digestion every day, hopefully, is letting go of the toxins, and your eyes and your nose and everything is in that process of release. And so it's natural. It's in you. We've just been so indoctrinated and so trained from the get-go. Don't cry. I'll give you something to cry about. The baby crying, it's not that you want them to cry, and you certainly don't want them to suffer, but you're going to do everything possible to stop that crying. And like, oh, tragic. We just went by a billboard getting here, and it said, don't shake the baby. Right? And that's like when people are desperate to get away from that negative stimulus, then we'll go to those extremes. But so it's relatively simple. The hard part is feeling. Letting go is easy. Once you make that choice, I want to be free. Yes, I'm going to let you go. And then a process takes place as if it's not even anything in your conscious awareness. Like often you get some kind of tectonic shift in your body. Digestion can respond. The wanting safety for some reason often brings up a burp. There's like a suppression of this energy down, and then it's not pushing anymore, and you're like, oh yeah. So it is natural. And I've been studying it very closely. What is this? And why does it work? All of the people that I work with are actually shocked. Like, oh, that worked. Wow. Why, why did that work? Or how did that work? And that worked. Oh, it worked again. Oh, it still works. So it's, to me, we are in an intelligent casing here. And then your Veda Austin interview inspired me so much. And it's been right on the money as far as the different states of water. I noticed you got an aqua cure going on over here. We all been looking at the water and consciousness water. I haven't gone that deep into it, but I really enjoyed your interview. And so what I discovered not that long ago, probably only maybe in going on a year was that when I release, there is not a liquid water feeling, but there's a plasma water feeling. And there's it could be a bubbling up of energy. And it has this, that can be one way. It can also be very effervescent. And just even thinking about it, I just feel it right across the right side of my body, up and out. And some people release down and through the legs and out the feet. And, I won't even give instructions. Could you let it up and out? I'll say, could you let it out any direction it wants to go in this moment? If you got energy stuck in your heart, you can even, it's no magic trick. Like you just even use your hands and open a door and okay, whatever's stuck in there is allowed to leave. It's about your conscious intention, your conscious permission, and your conscious decision. So most of those have been in the unconscious. With,
you talk about the fear of death. You never really fully resolve it. But as you're sort of allowing yourself to engage with and feel that fear that is present, do you find in your experience that it sort of takes the weight or the heaviness off each time you engage with it?
It becomes easier and easier every single time that you face death. Now, I have been often humbled. And I think it's so beautiful because it keeps me in a place where I never feel like I'm getting ahead of my people, right? So I don't get separate from them. I'm always in the trenches with them. But yeah, when you face death 10,000 times and it never did get you and you're here, and every single time you made that choice, you come out of it stronger, with more energy, with more capability, with you'd be able to do things, go through walls you never thought you could get through, then it starts to make an imprint. And there was one time when I was doing something kind of scary. It was in my very earliest truther days. And we were coming out, me and a woman, we were coming out and started to speak. And we were given our first event where we were going to say some scary things. And my fear started to rage. And it was the very first time when I got excited. I'm like, oh, good. Here comes freedom like this, even though it's painful, but there was this, excitement. And I can't promise that it's always like that. I don't want to paint this as a picture. It is a warrior path, allowing yourself to die like every day. It's not a little thing.
Do you engage with it every day?
At some level, I do engage with it every single day, right? Yeah.
Well, so it's not necessarily that it's the fear of death for other people, but what you're getting at is the engaging with fear of insert whatever thing or perceived, quote, negative emotion of related to something. Just engaging with it helps, I don't want to say you control it, but it helps release its control over you and it helps bring you into more freedom. And that's sort of what you're getting at here, right?
Right. I think we do say, Marion Woodman phrased it so beautifully. She said that our purpose here is to bring matter into awareness, matter into consciousness. So most of our matter is unconscious, right? The heart beats without you thinking about it. That's all so good. Like, I'm glad my lungs still breathe while I'm talking to you and not really thinking about breathing as much.
Is it that when you're engaging with this fear of insert whatever, it gets easier and easier, and it's just bringing you into more freedom and also showing you that feeling, that thing, that fear of whatever it is doesn't actually have any power over you, but it's actually enabling you to have more power by feeling it, have more freedom by feeling it.
Exactly. Yeah, you got it. That is your power. That is your power. And there's multiple layers. So the realm of the emotions is a really good one to focus on. But if you only work in the realm of emotions, you're not going to get free fast enough. And, according to Lester, he got free, the whole thing. All of his non-love feelings and experiences inside were released. And so he had that, what some people would say, a classic kind of enlightened experience. He could make things happen right in front of people. It was, even magic tricks that he wouldn't do. He didn't like doing that because it attracted people, and he didn't want that. He wasn't, just looking for adoration. And
it's also not about the actual action of the magic trick, like people doing spoon bending or blindfolded reading. It's about what it teaches you about yourself and the nature of reality, not the action itself.
It shows you your power.
Right.
Your authentic power that you actually have. And so the power is tied up. One of my courses is called Primal Power. And it's all about the archetypes that are on the precipice of life and death. You got the child, the victim, the prostitute, the saboteur, and the masculine feminine, which I call one archetype. And so these ones are always threatening you with death. They're also the invitation to fully live. And so in that awareness of the emotional realm, you see, oh, there's a lot of power in that emotion. And so if you stay only in the emotional realm, it will be too slow. You do let feelings go. Children are such a beautiful way to watch that. They go from like, I'm so mad I don't get to watch Blue because my brother did this. And then, and then she lets it go and she's like, oh yeah, happy. I'm just going to be doing the next activity.
She's literally
no
describing
problem.
my kids right now. Right outside. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. And then, but if you can go deeper to the level of the programming, and this was Lester's big discovery, that there are a discrete number of programs underneath what we're more aware of is feelings, but some people aren't aware of their feelings at all. Mm-hmm. So this is not like they don't know they're afraid. They don't know they're sad. They don't know they're, and then there's apathy. That's a big subject as well. And if just about the programs. So if you find the root, I call them the root programs, they are so unbelievably consistent in their presence under the feelings all the time. So you have very low emotions that we don't like, and we have high emotions that we do like and we're attracted to. And that's where a lot of people get trapped, is in the high emotions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then if you start to be more honest with yourself and you say, oh yes, courage, I love courage. So, in the pandemic, I learned to default in courage. I had to do such frightening things every single day that it just became a way of life to be courageous. And that sounds great. You're never going to want to talk anybody out of that. Or you start to see like, oh, there's a cost. What is the energetic cost? So here's another principle between suppressing and releasing is especially when you see either the feeling or the program itself, the question is, does it give you life or is it sucking the life out of you? Because it is going to promise you survival. It's going to promise you that people will love and approve of you. It's going to promise you that you'll be in control in your life. Those are the three primary root programs that are consistently found under everything. Mm. There's a fourth that I often take a while to teach just because people get into their heads about it, but it's about the fear that you're not one. And then so you have to want for oneness. The fear that you're not going to survive, therefore you have to want to survive. Mm. Fear that you're not in control, therefore you have to want control. Fear that you can't have love and approval, therefore you need to want that stuff. And it's the wanting that sets up a vacuum of energy. And it is literally, the programs are so expensive. They cost a lot of energy constantly to run. So you start that discrimination process. That's where it would be more Gyan Yoga in the Indian thing. So you're like using your mind. And we know how much we need our minds these days, right? It was a sad situation when you realize nobody could think in 2020. And so you think it through. It's like, yeah, it's taking energy from me. It's not providing anything. And then, oh, it listens to me when I talk to it. Wow, that's fancy. We were just not told this. I can't wait for the day that this is a kindergarten level training, like a child of 10 years old can take these instructions and release. Mm-hmm. So it is absolutely goal to be able to identify a root program. And for some people, first of all, it's too simple. They don't like things. They don't like the direct road to freedom. They need it to be complicated and have a lot of different accoutrements and different instruments and, steps and all this kind of stuff. But it's just between you and the program, right? And it greatly simplifies your life. You can feel like you have a lot of different problems in different areas of your life. Maybe there's relationship things going on or health things going on, or it's certain things you don't like about your work or your job or your finances, you have trouble, or your spirituality. There's your relationship with God is off. And once you get into the root programs, it can be at the base of absolutely everything. So you take out one root program and you have taken out a whole bunch of problems that literally do not exist anymore and can be almost an overnight process. I've had people go from being my enemy in front of my face to my friend in front of my face. Tested this many times with my ex.
Just by helping them identify their programs?
Nope.
Oh, no. Like how?
No,
then?
the other way around.
Ah.
So it's a path of radical responsibility.
So was it you identifying your programs then? Wow. Okay.
Because it doesn't help when you identify other people's programs.
Makes sense. That makes sense because this is really putting the onus is on you to make your reality more harmonious and not on anyone else.
You can't control anybody.
Right.
It turns out I tried that.
Right. Right.
And so, yeah, it's a really beautiful system.
Real quick, just because I want to make sense of it in my head as we continue on, are programs functions of archetypes, or are they synonymous with archetypes?
It's a fantastic question. And I'm still working on it. I don't think programs are synonymous with archetypes, but the archetypes are a perfect way to find the map to the program.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, because it gives you the specificity. Usually when you're having problems, you paint the picture, everything's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you just have this wall of stuckness, it's really hard. Like, where do I begin? And it's more likely that you might go into apathy and try to not care because it's overwhelming, right? I had 3 years to lay down and be quiet and to explore the inner world and the workings of it. And the level of complexity that I found was staggering, off the charts, mind-blowing. The creation of us is, wow, God. Like,
that's interesting because you found this through your cancer experience. I'd imagine that's what you're getting at, but you had been to India 8 times. So that really shows you that you were not engaging with the inner world. You were using these yogic practices as a form of escaping your inner world, completely disassociating from it. But now through this cancer experience, really putting you in your body. I wonder if that's why it came on, because it's like, hey, Beth, you need to be here inside of me, experiencing yourself here. And that's when you discovered your inner world.
Yeah, exactly.
So interesting.
I was forced to.
Mm-hmm.
Some people said, oh, you needed that to get to this place and this knowledge. And I know clearly, I just want to, for the record, I know that it was a mistake to get so out of alignment and so sick before I started that journey.
Do you look at it as a gift, though, that you did get sick in order to sort of be forced to come into communion with yourself?
No, but I made it into a gift.
Ah, okay.
I made it so. It's not a given. That gift is not. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I made it so. And that's the beauty. We always have the opportunity to turn our mistakes into something of value to others. Right. And sometimes you can't solve your own problem, but you can help others not get there.
Mm-hmm. So for you, learning about archetypes as you had this second diagnosis and you started really engaging with your inner world and these archetypes and sort of uprooting your programs or resolving your programs, if you will, or recognizing them. Mm-hmm. What did that look like in practical terms for you? I know it was engaging with the fear of death was one of the biggest pieces, but what else was it?
Like on the practical level and on the tangible, what you can see, it looks like different decisions, right? So it was the conviction that I was never going to go back into the corporate world, the knowledge that I never, ever needed to put myself in that compromised situation. I did actually a few contracts right up until the time when I was pregnant with my son, and I did one contract for my dad for just a couple of days. And I remember there was a time where I came home from that. It's grueling, right? Like really long hours, intense, and I'm 7 months pregnant. And I came home and I put my hands on my belly and I couldn't feel movement for the first time in days and days and days. And I'm like, so just seeing, okay, there's such a cost to this the movement came back. But so I was lucky. And so I was able to take the leap and just go off on my own and say like, okay, gonna start off. I was, I started doing workshops on the archetypes. I started teaching yoga because yoga was just starting to become a household word. It wasn't before. I was already 20 years ahead of my, not 20 years, about a decade ahead of the curve there.
So was this the integration of the rebel archetype then, this period of time?
Yeah. So then...
And I'm asking a lot of questions, going off on a lot of tangents,
okay.
but...
Yeah. I don't say the word integration so much because it's who you are. It's who you
recognizing then the rebel archetype. Because you were suppressing it when you started engaging in this way previous to your childhood and your upbringing and your adolescent years, but then now this is you re-acknowledging it, essentially.
Right. The rebel allowed me to make unconventional choices. Mm-hmm. So where people would say like, oh, you have to go back to that work because that's where the money is and the respectable in the eyes of society position is. Yeah. And I'm like, well, I think I'm going to try my luck here and I'm going to go off on a limb and I'm going to put myself out there and start doing these things that are less conventional, less recognizable. It took a long time. Like my parents totally didn't approve, of course, of what I was doing. And my dad would constantly, when are you coming back to the business? When are you coming back to the business? And I finally had a very hard call. Like, I'm not coming back ever. Yeah, like this. And so we were really upset. But yeah, so that the rebel gave me the chance to do something unconventional, to be able to pivot and change on a dime without a whole lot of stress. Rebels don't mind change. They like change. They invite change. And a lot of people are allergic to change. They cannot stand it. So yeah, operating much more as a rebel with a cause and having some really great experiences for it, very unique, and starting to build a tribe over time. And I did that until I had my son in 2007. And then I couldn't keep doing that. Go out and be the hippie yoga teacher for $20 an hour and, driving all over town to a variety of either studios or community centers and those kind of things. I was self-employed, but I still was pretty hodgepodge all over the place. And that was the time with my newborn in my arms, I started to train in higher end coaching. And as a business coach, I trained at that time as well and got myself into a different league altogether because I knew that at the time I was a single parent, even though my son's dad was in the picture. I thought everything might come down on me. I have to be next level responsible. And it was all work that I could do from home for the most part as I built up my coaching practice. And I never looked back. It was funny when a girlfriend was saying to me, like, Beth, you always complain about being a teacher because there were so many limitations I was always coaching, but people weren't really getting it and they weren't using it and they weren't committing to it. And when you pay for a $20 class, you come and you go and it's just a small part of your life. Whereas coaching, when you put together a lot of value in higher end packages, then people make greater commitments and have much bigger breakthroughs. So that was so satisfying. And then, I just trained and then was able to come across Lester Levinson's work along those lines. So I did a lot of traveling to Arizona in those days. They had a lot of their teacher trainings. And then I became a certified trainer through an organization out of New York and Arizona. I think they had a co-arrangement there. So that was really good. And I worked with them for a time. I was pretty committed to them, but it was interesting because they didn't like my rebel. And I wasn't even being rebellious, but they just read this energy. Maybe they read power. They were offended by some personal power, confidence, or whatever it is I was having, or high energy. That's another thing. People are offended by high energy, which is, a good thing to know. And it's something you can remedy, by the way. And they started accusing me of things like I come to a retreat and they're like, oh, Beth's doing drugs. And I'm like, no, actually, I'm not. I might if I was in the country where I could do it, but I'm in the US or I don't know, like just, there was all this. And then they went back in my Facebook. There was a time when part of my rebel and I had some mermaid days in there as well. And so I was part of an art show where we were body painted into me. I was a mermaid and I was half nude in that. So it was like off the charts. And I had a Facebook picture of my back, not my front, of course. You know? And so they found this. They go combing in my past and they find this and they're like, oh, Beth, you're not a fit for this. You're going to have to take that photo down. And then I'm like, you know what? I've been working for free for you for too long now. And I think it's time to say goodbye. So just cut bait there. Yeah.
If you're enjoying this episode, please consider sharing it with at least one friend or family member who you think could benefit from hearing it. You help us grow and reach more people by sharing it with those around you. Also, be sure to head to the show notes to check out our membership offerings, membership marketplace, and more. We all know that Big Ag is poisoning our food supply, and Big Pharma's so-called medicine is straight up poison. What most people aren't aware of, though, is that most supplements are also filled with artificial sweeteners, dyes, GMOs, glyphosate, and a host of other toxic ingredients, even many of the more natural supplements. My good buddy James Benefico dedicated his life to crafting the world's cleanest, most nutritious organic supplements after a pre-workout energy drink caused heart palpitations so severe that he almost landed up in the ER. Organic Muscle was born, revolutionizing sports nutrition by using exclusively non-GMO ingredients from USDA organic farms. Since then, tens of thousands of people, including myself, have leveled up their fitness and their health with Organic Muscle's award-winning natural pre-workout. There's no jitters, no heart palpitations, no itchy skin, just nourishing organic food and herb-based ingredients for clean, sustained energy, strength, endurance, and recovery. Numerous studies have shown that tonka ali is the most effective herb in the world for naturally boosting testosterone levels. And we know that testosterone levels are depleting all over the world because of what's put in the food supply, what we're exposed to. Organic Muscle has the world's first fully organic tonka ali supplement. I only support and promote things that I actually use, and I can say I legitimately use Organic Muscle products. Use code FORWARD15 at checkout for 15% off at organicmuscle.com. In nearly all cases with modern health systems, you're waiting months for appointments only to spend a mere 10 minutes with a doctor who quickly hands out a generic diagnosis that is likely rooted in a total misunderstanding of health and causes, and then you're offered a one-size-fits-all medication or invasive treatments with unpleasant side effects. If this sounds all too familiar, consider a different approach with the New Biology Clinic, founded by Dr. Tom Cowan, a respected natural health doctor, author, and speaker. Dr. Cowan's holistic perspective on health and wellness and a deep understanding of the true nature of health and disease sets this clinic apart. With the New Biology Clinic, it's not about quick fixes and suppressing symptoms. The practitioners take time to understand your unique story, recognizing that health is unique to the individual and that illnesses have a variety of causes, physically and metaphysically. Members of the New Biology Clinic enjoy a flat monthly fee that includes a range of valuable services like health consults as needed, practitioner-led live streams on diverse health topics, access to a members-only resource library, and multiple live group sessions every month. These sessions cover fitness, breathing integration, biofield tuning, guided meditation, EFT tapping, and much more. Unlike traditional healthcare systems that thrive on frequent visits, prescriptions, treatments, and suppressing symptoms, the New Biology Clinic's motivation is to make you healthy and keep you that way. Visit newbiologyclinic.com to learn more and use code THEWAYFORWARD for $50 off your account activation. If you're a member of The Way Forward, email hello@thewayforward.com to receive $150 off your account activation. Your journey to genuine healing begins here. So you were engaging with this, or acknowledging, like I said, this rebel archetype in you. I want to circle back a little bit, though. How did you begin to use this knowledge of archetypes to resolve your cancer issues that you were dealing with?
Yeah, it was the seeing of the pattern. So I'm a self-proclaimed pattern hunter. Very popular in the truth community as well, right? And so once you see the patterns, and that's the beauty of the work that has come before us for those who've identified archetypes that transcend all culture and all time. Doesn't matter where you find a rebel, the qualities are consistent in almost in a spooky way, although it doesn't scare me. And so once you see like, wow, I fit this pattern, which is often very much more easily identified through the shadow rather than the gifts. The shadows are all like, oh, that's me. That's me.
That's usually
me.
unconscious, right? So it's like driving behind the scenes without your awareness. So you're not applying any of your conscious awareness to it. So it just is. It's easier to identify it for what it is that way.
It's that it blows up in your face as problems.
Got it.
You got problems. So you might not even be aware of the archetype, of course, but you've got the problems. You've got conflict in relationships. You've got people who don't like you just because you walk in the room. You got abandoned projects because you didn't have the more warrior endurance. You were stuck in that rebel, getting bored with something that's not new anymore. And so you see those patterns in your life, and there's ways to look. So archetypes can be a lifetime thing. Archetypes have origin, so they're consistent throughout your entire life. You can see those patterns. And there's also ones that come and go. Like parents, for example, you may not have the nurturer front and center, but when your children are 0 to 14 or 17, you're going to have that nurturer. Mm-hmm. You're going to like call on it, so to speak. But I don't recommend calling on archetypes. So by knowing the pattern, it's not very mystical. You just learn the pattern. How does it express in its conscious form? How does it express in its unconscious form? And then where are you in that? And what can you clean up with? So when you see the shadow, you go like, oh, it's the nurturer. I'm out of alignment. I've been working too hard. I'm not charging enough. I'm not looking after myself while I'm looking after other people, for example. There's a pattern for you.
This is the one you find in the truth community quite a bit, right?
Also the case. Yeah. There's a bunch of them. And then so you go, okay, I know it's the nurturer. Now this is just an intellectual idea. I know it's the nurturer because it's a perfect fit on the pattern. Mm. And then you go and you start looking, okay, well, how do I feel about never charging enough money for what I provide? Oh, well, I feel angry at the people I'm working with. Oh, or I feel sad because I'm not meeting my needs properly. And then you go, okay, so could you feel that right now? Whatever it is, could you allow it to be there rather than like just being mad at people or just beating yourself up, for example, right? That's like a bypass, it can be spiritual bypass as well. And then you ask yourself the question, what's the program that keeps me locked in anger at the people I'm helping, right? Like really bad dynamic. You shouldn't be angry at the people you're helping. It's not really what they signed up for at all. And then you ask yourself the program, and that new decision becomes suddenly apparent, like a revelation.
Wow.
I didn't know I had that choice. It seems like, well, because it's on automation, it seems automatic that it's just, and then people are like, oh, you have a right to be angry. They come and lock us down in 2020 and abuse us and call us out and have these systems that people will you're able to turn you in because you didn't do the right thing. You had people over, whatever, right? And so they'll say, oh, you're right to be angry. That's righteous anger. But when you take poison, you get sick. So, everybody knows how that goes.
Right.
And so, taking radical responsibility, that we were talking about that as well, that when somebody else is, or when you're having a problem with somebody else, you want to work on them. It's just a natural thing. Your behavior, and it could be very true. Your behavior is wrong. You're out of alignment. I've been in that situation with my son and his dad where they were both wrong, dead wrong. And everybody would have agreed with me that they were wrong. But I had this problem that I was having a distance relationship with my son growing by the day. It's like, that's not what I want. Mm. I had a child because he was so important to me. Mm. And then so I took it on. I stopped working on my son. That took the pressure off that relationship. I stopped working on my son's dad. Took the pressure off that relationship. I went full-time here, finding all the programs that I got triggered with. Let them go, let them go, let them go, let them go. And the next thing you know, my son starts to lean into me. Oh, mama, like this. And he wants to be with me. And he starts confiding in me. And he starts listening to me, what I tell him to do for his health or well-being.
Can I share something that
Please.
Relates? And I wasn't even aware of programs. I just looked at this in the context of not subjecting my healing to anything outside of me. My healing is about me and processes in here, and I cannot rely on anyone outside of me for it. Not to say that you can't find knowledge from a doctor or things like that, but point being, I was estranged from my dad for 3.5 years. And I was so angry at all the ways that he had treated me, all the things that he had done to me growing up. We did not have a good relationship. It was quite tumultuous and chaotic and just very bad. But the moment that I released the need for him to make amends for any of that stuff, he then did. Like once I gave up, and then the same thing happened recently with another one of my family members who I've been estranged from for 2 years now. I stopped requiring that person makes amends, and I just come to a place of genuine forgiveness, which required that I feel the anger, I feel the frustration, I feel the rage, I feel the sadness, I feel all those feelings related to that relationship in here, and resolve that and get to a genuine, not a forced, not a spiritual bypassy, but a genuine place of compassion. Once I got there, that person now re-entered my life in a more harmonious way. I swear, like it has blown my mind. Even as she was apologizing to me, I was like, I had that epiphany. I was like, oh my God, the moment that I released the need for you to apologize, now you're here apologizing to me. Same thing happened with my dad. I've already experienced this before. Why didn't I know that with this relationship? It's so interesting. It's so interesting.
It's the power of that illusion that it is somebody else's outside of yourself problem. And you got all the evidence.
Right.
They're being a jerk. They said all the wrong things. They abused you. They're whatever, right? But at the end of the day, you just don't get anywhere that way. It's not practical.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So brilliant. That's amazing, right?
It was so incredible. This happened recently too. So it was just amazing. So another question I have related to the archetypes, is it a fixed archetype that each of us is imbued with? Are there like multiple archetypes we're imbued with, or can we pick and choose archetypes to, I don't like saying, you said it too, not call upon them necessarily, but like become aware of them? Are there archetypes that are more prevalent for each of us? I mean, you just discussed that the rebel was for you. So I threw like 10 questions. So pick on any of those.
No, it's good. And it kind of narrows down to one question anyway. But so there, like I said, the complexity of the inner life is beyond imagination. Mm-hmm. You can barely conceive of it in all the time that I spent on that inward looking. So what I notice is that there are particular archetypes that you have an affinity for. One way to say it is that they're more important to you than others, based on your calling, what your mission is, what you're here to do on this earth. And so you could use the word family. There might be a certain family of archetypes that are more important to you, that are closer to you, that are more consistent over time also. But are they fixed? No, they can be created. So one example is like, we never had a tech geek before because we didn't have the technology in our daily lives. But now we got the tech geeks, and you can see them like, oh, you just came out of your basement after 17 hours in front of a screen.
You can totally tell.
Yeah.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're not fixed. They are a creative realm, but they're much more like the hard drive of your computer rather than the software. So you have to do a lot of engineering. People can also change and reclaim certain archetypes that have been associated in a certain way. It is a full-time job to change the meaning of an archetype, or to take it out of a certain way of using. So one of the archetypes on the hero's journey that I write about in my book is the hedonist. That's in the second half of the journey. And if you call anybody, if I say, hey, Alec, you're a hedonist, you're not going to think I just gave you a compliment. It's going to be a takedown. So I'm on a mission to reclaim the hedonist, because it has both gifts and shadows. And yes, the shadows are very real. And the reason we use that in a derogatory way is bona fide. But the gifts are unmistakable. So, and to me, it's by design that they would X out or give that such a bad reputation to the hedonist, because then we're not going to receive the gifts of it.
What are some of the gifts of hedonists?
A direct path with God. That's the purpose of pleasure. And finding the pleasure in purpose. Very subtle.
Yeah.
Right? Compared to I need to stuff my face with sugar or whatever kind of, I need a quick fix. The purpose is slow cooking process, but the pleasure is off the charts. Yeah. And we're meant for pleasure. We're meant to inherit the earth. God didn't create incredible abundance and food and color and sensual experiences for just so that we can be entrapped in them. That was a big part of the yogic training that I received, that your senses and your body are all low class. So everything from up here, this is high class and good.
I just don't buy that.
And no.
Yeah.
No, exactly. It didn't work for me either. And it makes a lot of dissociated people, disembodied people, and people who don't care.
Yeah.
Because you think you're in bliss, but it's really on the heels of apathy. And if I could talk about a little bit the spiral nature of life, I'm sure you're not new to that at all. How, you just walk in the seashells and on the beach and you see the seashells, everything is arranged like that. Well, it turns out the inner life is also spiraled. And the emotional scale, if you're familiar with, there's two people that discovered it, maybe at the same time. Maybe it was stolen, one from the other. Who knows how it happened? But both Lester Levinson and David Hawkins discovered the scale of emotion. So it was, now this part I will claim, because neither of them teach it as a spiral. And in fact, it was taught to me more as a ladder. And you go up the ladder, you go up the staircase. And then when you get to the top of the staircase, another staircase. And it's, you go up and then it has this sort of infinite. And then it's like, but when you turn the staircase like this, it's like, it's doing that now. And once I distinguished that it was a spiral, then I was able to spiral my emotions. So if I am down in a very low place of apathy or grief, which are the first two lowest vibrations of the human emotion scale, and I don't think it's good for me to be in apathy, and it's not, and neither the despair. You don't want to. That's a sin, actually, in my world, to get lost in despair and stay there. Then I can spiral my way up the scale. Now, the purpose of spiraling up the scale is so that you can release and heal. It's not its own purpose. And that's, in a nutshell, why it's such a trap. People love the high energy, they hate the low energy, and then they cling to and they get attached to the high energy. And so archetypes can be very much the same, where you have the high enlightened expression of that archetype, and it's only the map, right? And what's it a map to? It's a map to get off the map, right? It's a map to freedom, because you can just end up on that spiral infinitely and you keep going up, 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 but as above, so below. So as you go up, everything that you haven't handled is going to come up from below. And it might even be creating the low, because you're creating the high.
Yeah.
And so you end up with a lot more problems that you're not aware of, because you're all on the ceiling with your high energy.
This describes the New Age community to a T.
And that was where I was going with the point. So you get all these people and these yogis, they're all like in bliss and there's the enlightenment, and they're, it's like, no, you're in apathy. You don't care. You don't care about people suffering. You're completely in apathy about your own suffering, pretending it's not there. And so we have to wear this veneer that I'm so spiritual. And I never met, like in my yoga days, it was one huge disillusionment after another. I kept trying to let's make some community out of this. We're all doing the same thing. Let's get together. And they're like, I hate you and get away. And, all this snobbery. And
right.
I'm just like, okay, this is not my beautiful world. So I really was quite insular, just doing my own thing until I started breaking out of that. And so the archetypes are a map to get off the map.
Yeah.
To true freedom. And this was something, if I could follow up quickly, that meeting Matt Presti at Anarchapulco, and him and I've interviewed him like several times. He's done a workshop in my thing, and
I'm interviewing him in, I think, mid-July. So I'm
good.
really looking forward to that,
He's so fun. I really love him. He's a great example of all of this work as well. And although he didn't want to try this method, so I had to, maybe, not that you need to challenge anybody, it's not like that. I just thought he was so ready for it, he was, anyway. And so he put words to something I hadn't articulated yet, but that I knew, and that God is not a frequency. God is not a vibration. And for me, God and freedom are the same. So you use the word freedom. It's just more from my training. That word came forward. Some people can't stand the word God. turns out the word God in the Bible, it's not what we are hoping for. Mark Archer, who I have interviewed a few times too, he corrects me every single time. Like, don't use that word. It's life with a capital L. And I've been there too a lot in my days, my spiritual days. It was life more than God. So, but whatever, I'm out of word jail now. I let myself completely out of word jail, and I don't put other people in the word jail. But that beautiful point that God is not a frequency. So if you're a frequency chaser, you're never ever going to have experience your direct relationship with God.
Yeah, that sounds right to me. I mean, I look at all of the quote negative experiences in my life and continually engaging with the shadow aspects of myself as bringing me closer to God. And likewise, there's this sometimes subtle, sometimes directly expressed desire amongst New Age circles to transcend the body or transcend this reality, which really is just escaping this reality, where they're constantly looking upwards and not realizing that their feet are firmly planted on the ground, and that we are supposed to engage intimately with this reality here and find God throughout all of it, not trying to, failing to acknowledge the lower three chakras, if you will, to use some of their terminology, just to, try to engage with the sixth and seventh. But it just, I previously bought into some of that stuff, into some of the ascension stuff, and I don't anymore, because I find that you're always waiting on the moment that we all ascend. It's like another play on the rapture psyop. And it's causing us to disassociate from this reality here, and really aiding in our hindered capacity to co-create this experience.
Exactly. And how convenient for our controllers when we don't want to be in this. And, like even when they talk about, oh, this isn't home where I'm homesick, I'm going to go home. It's like, oh, of course, that's perfect. Then you're never going to like totally value and put all your time and energy and be creative, because that's such a huge cure to everything is creating and generating. And you won't do that in a place where you don't feel like it's yours. And they say meat suit, like, give me a break, meat suit. Come on, meat suit. This is like a miracle. Yeah. Every single day, every breath, every time you wake up, it's like, wow.
Yeah. I wasn't able to show this at Anarchapulco, but I meant to as part of my talk towards the end. This video that a buddy of mine, James, created that was a key video during the end of COVID, and it's called "What If My Body Is Brilliant?" And it's like that. It's like, this is a brilliant, beautiful thing that we get to have in this life, and we're supposed to engage intimately with it and feel all the feelings across all the spectrums and engage so deeply. And it just, again, I look back on the quote negative experiences, and that was a medicine to pull me closer to God. It was like, it totally was. And continually just shoving that stuff down and trying to transcend beyond it, just allows that to fester and bubble up and become a shadow aspect of yourself, like you said, that other people can recognize that you don't. Yeah,
exactly. And one of my big revelations in the past 4 years also was, so I was getting deeper into it, and people were suffering a lot, right? There was so much, it was a total knock 'em down for me. I lost my whole entire family. Literally, my son is my family right now, although one aunt just recently
We're your family
re-entered.
I'm your family though too.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, and I feel that too. I feel that. Yeah, and so much better actually, I have to say. So I'm like praying to God. I'm going, oh, why so much suffering? And I was also very aware, more aware than I'd ever been about the suffering of the high frequency. And finally experiencing the suffering part of that. Not just like, oh, woo, I'm on the ceiling, great. Aren't I doing good? And then I said, God, why? Why to create so much suffering? This is your creation, the whole scale of emotion. And we can romanticize about, being embodied, but there's a lot of things that are uncomfortable. And it's weaponized against us too. So there's a lot of things to make us uncomfortable and make the body experience not a beautiful one, although we have that too. So just like, why, God? And I hear this, Beth, they're all doors to freedom. Every single experience, low, high, a cell in your body, a breath in your nose, food in your belly, the taste of a flower, it's all a door to freedom. And what ends up happening, two primary things that happen is that we won't touch the door. We're like, nope, not going to the door. Door's dangerous. Door's representing freedom, because in the inversion of it, freedom is the danger and death is the friend, right? And so we won't go to any of those experiences. You insulate yourself. You try not to have relationships that bring up all your inner life. And then the other mistake is that people get locked in the door. And that's, say, that the shadow of the hedonist, that you get so attached to all of these experiences that your mouth is going to have that you forget your belly's included in the equation here. Mm-hmm. And pleasure's got to be lasting, not just like 3 seconds while you scarf that thing. Mm. And so the purpose of experiencing here is freedom, all of that. And then it's just the challenge to remember. And it's when your life gets really good. And this morning, like just noticing with having a little problem with the shower, and then my mind, like this about the shower, and then I'm going like, you know what? I'm actually so grateful to have this beautiful place to rest myself in, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to come and speak with you today. And everybody knows the gratitude thing, but it was about 12 seconds, and I'm talking to God, and I'm full of life, and I just went through that experience to get to a place where I was genuinely free and not suffering at all. So, yeah, getting stuck in the door. There's a number of traps inside that. We get stuck in emotions we don't like, in despair, and then once you're in courage, acceptance, and peace, we love that stuff. We're not willing to let go. And that's been my primary focus now, especially with an inner core group of people that I have trained now in the process of COVID. I have run 5 trainings of what I call Journey Code Coaching Certification. Mm-hmm. And then so the more adept that they become, the people that have stuck around in the process, many people vacate the process. They get so far and they're like, no, I'm not going further. And then so they can go to higher levels. And there's been a lot of focus on letting the high side of the programs go. Mm. This is something I also talked about at an Acapulco, how there's a foundational program called I Can. And we think we're here on earth so that we can go from I can't to I can. Maybe you heard my talk already. Mm-hmm. And then so you think that you've arrived. Okay, I can, I'm good now. But what if you had the access to a different kind of motivation that wasn't a wanting for that, to erase the I can't and get to the I can? What if we lived a beautiful life and envisioned something more amazing than we could have ever, in fact, imagined possible, from a place that's not driven from fear, but is the very essence of I am. Mm.
I am sounds more powerful than I can.
It's infinitely more powerful. It's no push and pull. Yeah. No more attachment. No more aversion.
It's like it's already given.
Exactly. You're off the map. Yeah. You're into freedom. And then you got wind beneath your sails. It's not because we have this illusion. It's just us. Mm. I know you don't hold it, but that we're just fighting with the world and wrestling all the situations. It's a little bit on the warrior side in the first half of the journey. Mm. There's a place for it. But when you get the I am and things start to happen, and that's frightening too, that gives you new problems. Mm. There was the other day, I was teaching about the victim archetype, which is one of the primal ones, not a journey archetype. it shows up at every place in the journey. You always got, and I'm looking out the window going, yeah, where am I at with the victim right now that I'm teaching it? I feel pretty clean with the victim. And then literally 3 seconds later, boom, 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 I had awareness because I had invited it. And one of the things I was feeling victim to was opportunity.
Mm.
Well, that's a very unconscious choice.
Mm.
Right? That's exactly the opposite. What if I was to stay locked in that and suffer it and not release it, then I'm telling God that opportunity is a problem for me, and God's going to go like, oh, okay, well, should we just take that out? And even God's not like that. That's me just sabotaging myself and putting it on God. So it's possible to get into a lot of the nuances, and then the whole purpose is the hero's journey.
That's where I was going to lead next.
I could read your mind there.
Yeah.
Nice. You know, at the end of the day, if we only solve our own problems, there's no satisfaction in that. Or if we only get our own goals, get what we want, or we get, you know, basic needs met, and then our more like, wouldn't it be nice if kind of things, that's good for about, 12 seconds. It feels like a great thing.
I just interviewed Kelly Brogan yesterday, and she said literally the exact same thing about all of her achievements. Like, she got to it and she was like, one of her friends, or I think it was her agent, called her after her first book became a New York Times bestseller.
Wow.
And she was like, oh my God. And then that feeling was gone after like 12 seconds or whatever she said. So
yeah.
It's chasing those very temporary, fleeting feelings instead of being in love with the journey and intimately involved in that process and aware that that's what we're supposed to love, is this journey, rather than the act itself that we're, seeking towards.
Right. And I'll look forward to that conversation. But one of the things that happens is that you think, oh, it's the next thing that will give me, because that's our indoctrination, right? That it's the experience that will give you, oh, I had one child and now I'm disillusioned, so I'll have another one and see if that works out any differently. Oh, disillusioned again. I see. So, oh, it was the car. I needed that car. Or, I'm sure that's not in your wheelhouse there. But so, yeah, we just end up going for the next thing and the next thing. And the real journey is when you realize, okay, I have accumulated knowledge, resources, whatever, abundance, excess. And now, how am I going to give back? And here is what I notice without fail. When I help people to heal and release and go through tragically difficult times or whatever it is that they're suffering with, on the heels of the healing is always that desire to go and teach other people. And that's what I've always noticed. Every time I had a breakthrough, revelation, I just instantly wanted to give that back to people. And so that's the thing, bringing that elixir to other people. I like comparing it actually to AA, which I know has its problems with the 12 steps. But the last step is basically, if you don't give away your recovery and help someone else recover, you don't get to keep yours. And this is also a revelation on the hero's journey that can seem like it's a, start at the beginning and end up here. And that's not like that. Again, turning it on its end, spiral nature. So what I discovered is the archetypes that had come to me, this was on the heels of my father passing away. Now in that time I would have talked about like entities. I was visited by archetypes. It felt like that. I was literally having these impressions and night after night after night and visualizations for a person that has no visual, like I'm auditory and felt all the way, but all of a sudden I'm having these visions. Oh,
you're actually like seeing archetypes.
I was actually seeing.
So you call them just other archetypes. Are they then a function of, are they a creation of you, or are they a separate entity coming to you?
I would say that, again, they're hardwiring with no life of their own. But the experience of them can be like they do have, that they are an entity. And that's what Carl Jung said about archetypes. They're entities. So I don't agree with that at all. I believe they're only come alive through the lens of that archetype because of the God energy coming through you and you're projecting your light
with it, if you will. Okay.
Yeah, or projecting
it makes sense because I don't know if you've ever read The Red Lion by Maria Zepes. That book is incredible, but in that book it talks about how in this context, astral demons are a creation of you. It is your creation and only you can resolve them. But likewise,
I can so go exactly both ways on that.
Yeah.
And I think I've had so much experience with demons, like crazy. And there were times when I was calling in everything in my spiritual life, calling in the gods and the goddesses and the elements and the herbs and always calling on these things. And you're nodding your head, so you probably already know.
I'm familiar.
Yeah, it makes openings in you, and then the wrong stuff can show up.
Totally. And that's where, like, this is a whole nother conversation, but when it comes to plant medicine, it requires that you have someone who is really, really intentional and really well trained with that, because that's what they're opening up for if they're not. That's what you're subjecting yourself to.
Right, exactly. And yeah, it's a fascinating thing I learned to deal with, because there is a sense of it being something other than you. And then I've dealt with so many inner demons, and they're always the opposite. They feel like you, and they're not you, right? And that's one of the questions that I would ask as a coach when you bump up against a program is like, is that who you are? Or does it just feel like who you are? Feels like who I am. Could you let go of what's not you? But with these demons, it's different. But the technique is the same. The beauty of it is that it's no different. It's just like, oh, I'm afraid. Could I let the fear go? What program's under that fear? It's telling me to want something I don't have. That's a lie. I'm going to let that lie go. And so it is an instantaneous dissolvement of that experience of that demon being there. I also learned the short form is like, Jesus, could you handle this for me, please? And I'm not a card-carrying Christian, but Jesus is the demon slayer, and there's instantaneous.
There's something about that. I think it was Andy Kaufman when I was talking to him about his time as a forensic psychiatrist. I don't know if it was his direct experience. No, it was in one case where he brought up how, like, praying to Christ or invoking Christ helped these other people who were possessed be able to speak for the first time or something like that. I think I'm paraphrasing or maybe saying it a little bit incorrectly, but nonetheless, same type of thing, that invoking or evoking Christ is what helps resolve some possession, psychotic break type experiences in some people, which is interesting.
And there's a spontaneous calling on Christ that isn't planned or isn't, premeditated or anything like that. And there was one time where the ante upped, and I used to get one demon at a time, and all of a sudden there's a crowd of them, like, and then all of a sudden I'm like, Jesus loves you, and Jesus loves you, and Jesus loves you. I didn't even plan to say Jesus loves you, but Jesus loves you, and then poof, the whole crowd is gone, and I go to sleep in seconds after that with zero fear and zero problem. And then there was one woman I was speaking to recently, and she introduced the idea of possibly that there's some kind of like clair vision going on, or clair, that I'm seeing things that are actually there and real and interacting, and that in a way it makes sense to me. I didn't even think of it, but yeah, there's a staggering volume of that kind of experience. And there was only one time I was recently genuinely, after interviewing Mark Archer, I had one like that made me frightened and shaken in my boots and going like, do I need to get up and call somebody or something? Like there's a problem here, but I was able to handle it with all my own tools, and it was fine. I thought maybe like, oh, Satan knows I'm onto him or something like that.
I have a question sort of along this line of discussion that we're talking about right now, and it's related to our co-creative capacity. You're talking about God and praying to God, and I guess like the bigger question is, do you think that oneness is the fundamental reality, or do you think that we are separate, distinct entities from God?
Oneness is my direct experience that I haven't been able to let go of. And there's a program that says you don't have that. And when you let the program go, your instant experience is that everything is completely interconnected. Right,
because you always come back to, you're saying that rather than I can or I can't, it's that I am. And that is what God is. God is I am, or you said God is life with a capital L, but it's that we are an aspect of God, or we are, because there's even two lines of thinking in that realm too. There's what's it called? I forget what it's called, but there is the idea that we are an aspect of God, but God is still a separate, distinct entity on its own that is omniscient, all-knowing, all-powerful. And then there's another idea that like there is no separate, distinct entity, that we are all just one being modulating itself in an infinite number of unique ways. I think you kind of get what I'm getting at. What do you think about that?
So that's more my experience, what you're talking about, that we're all expressions of the same divine. And, so I'm like a little kid. I just go direct and ask God. I don't go study in the books and everything, what they say. And so I'm aware of that it's the same life in you that is in me. It's not separate. But there's also something that happens, a kind of spiritual arrogance, when people walk around and like, I'm the creator, like this. And yet I've also been talking about that, like incredible power that we do have and should use. But there's something that happens where that's more the satanic side of it. Yeah. Because Lucifer wanted to overthrow God and go like, I am the creator. So there's still a beauty in, and I actually really loved adopting the God my Father kind of that felt right. Like, yes, I came from, now we also came from God the Mother, right? Like you can't unfortunately get rid of the masculine feminine law principle in just because the religion said so. So it's something that if you said the word co-creation, and then Matt Presti always makes this quote that God won't work for you, but God will work with you, or the other way around. And it's just so true. And this is kind of my ongoing prayer, especially when anything gets tense. It's like, God, are we in this together? So in this together, like amazing, right? And I do what I can, and God does what I can't. And that has been my experience over and over and over and over and over. So, I don't think we're going to necessarily solve the problem and the mystery of that, but getting into the spiritual arrogance part, I think is a totally dead end kind of a trap. But yeah, like I remember I was actually kicked out of a bunch of, I had Christians break up with me, write letters to break up with me during the pandemic, because I was asking about oneness. I wasn't even asserting it, because I'm going like, this has been my experience. And they had such a strong aversion to even the concept of being one with God, even though the Bible says it over and over again. I and my Father are one. That you just use the word one, right. So, it's to me irrefutable.
Yeah, that's just a question that I have. Like, how much capacity do we have to co-create this experience? And I've said this before on this podcast, like, if we're all co-creating this experience, which I agree, if we all, in a hypothetical scenario, let's say all people on the earth decided one day that they think that the sky is red, would the sky then actually turn red? Or is there like an objective program in this reality that was set forth by a creator who we are inextricably linked to, but is more powerful than us?
I love it. I heard you ask someone that question, and I
don't remember who I did, but I think about it all the time.
Yeah. That's great. And I was like, oh yeah. And I'm so glad you asked me, because it's like, no, the sky would not turn red.
Yeah.
No. There is a, as far as I'm concerned, there is a reality. And that's the revelation. When you see reality for what it is, when you're not seeing it through the filter of programming.
Yeah.
And then you're in that state of I am, or not state. It's not a state. I'm sorry, that's old language to talk about it. But you are one with your creator, seeing through creator's eyes. And there's nothing in there. It's not like that. The sky's blue. And that's more, possibly, again, part of the agenda of our controllers to make us think that, there's no fixed reality, right?
And I don't like that idea. I like the idea that there is no objective reality, that objective reality is simply the consensus of all of our subjective realities overlapping. Like, maybe to some degree that creates a superficial layering on top of what is objective reality, though. I can't imagine that there isn't. And I think that our ability to co-create this experience is much more effortless when we are more in alignment with objective reality, with, like you said, sort of being aware of and working out these programs that are running in the background. And the more that we do that, the more that we're in line with objective reality, and the more capacity we have to co-create.
Yeah, and take responsibility for what is actually there in front of our eyes. Yeah. You can respond to what is. You can't respond to what isn't.
Yeah.
And there's no end of illusion. And if a group of people got together and convinced themselves that the sky is red, I still don't think they'd see that red sky. But I don't, they might talk themselves into some theory that blue is not red, or it's not blue. And
well, because it is interesting, right? Because we do obviously have some metaphysical effect on our own biology, at the least for us. But when there's been several examples of people gathering in one place and focusing with attention and intention on an outcome of a thing happening, like lowering the crime rate in a city. And it has real material effects on reality elsewhere on, quote, other people, which just sort of shows how interconnected we are, inextricably linked we are. But again, I think that it's our ability to co-create within a certain frame, right, that was set forth by our creator.
Right. We were given certain colors to paint with, and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. I always think about that. That's like the question for me. I don't know why. That one is like the question that I wrestle with so much. And I do go back and forth quite a bit on that. So the archetype that you've brought up before to me, the nurturer that, we talked about, is prevalent in the truth community, especially as we're wanting to wake other people up or wanting to help other people. Let's talk about that a little bit, because I've found that in myself, sort of identifying with what I would call the shadow aspect of the nurturer, where I've let myself burn out. And like you said, start being angry with the people that I'm supposed to be serving because I'm not making enough money. And there were times where both my wife and I had like $4 left in our bank account, and we're looking at selling a bunch of our stuff and just not in a good place. And I think it's because I had this program running in the back, or this archetype, that I wasn't aware of the shadow aspect of it. But let's go there now.
Great. So the nurturer is the last archetype on the first stage of the hero's journey. So before it comes the child, slaying the demons of denial and betrayal and abandonment that moves you forward into the rebel. When you give up being rebel without a cause, you move forward into the warrior. When you develop the discipline and the inner fortitude and the ability to build infrastructure for a new future and reach goals, that moves you forward into the nurturer. And so the nurturer is purposed to, as you said, serve and help and be there in support of others. Why? Because you have slayed enough of your own demons and dragons that you have excess, whether it is abundance or time or energy or care, whatever it is. And so it's a very beautiful thing. And parents know it really well, because especially in the youngest years of your children's life, you have the luxury of not caring about yourself so much anymore. Not the luxury of having all these little problems you used to have, but you just don't have time for those little problems anymore.
Right, that's so true.
Like Kelly said, whatever. Oh, well, it's like, let's not, I don't know, not talking about Kelly Broken. And
you're talking about a kid, Kelly.
Possibly. Kid Kelly, right. And so then it's amazing. There is a freedom, a great freedom that comes when you spend more time helping and serving others than you do just taking care of your own little life. And so it's a beautiful thing. It is a gift. Now, what's happening in the world today is that the need for nurturers is artificially being ramped up. They're making people sick. That all of those that lost their job because they wanted to stay in integrity with themselves. The amount of stress, the loss of relationships alone, the isolation, right? That's creating people with a lot more problems in their health, in their relationships, in their work, whatever it is. Finances, of course. And then never mind spirituality and purpose, which is also very easy to lose when you're troubleshooting all the crap that's going on. You don't remember, what am I here to do? You're just like, oh, solve that problem. Oh, solve that problem. So we have more and more need for nurturers. And this is where in 2020, I'm going to God like, oh, okay, well, is this a time where I just quit everything? I was kind of hitting my stride when the everything fell down. And do I just prep now and call it a day? I was like, and I'm weeping and crying. And then I'm going like, wait a minute, I never did lay down to die. Even when I'm dying, I wasn't really dying. And it's, not quite my style. And so I asked God, what could I create right now that would be of service to people in keeping with my will to serve and help me take steps forward and continue being in the world as well. And it was then I received the news that it was now to create a coaching certification training. And I'm like, oh, okay. And it was a beautiful thing because I put my energy full time into serving those future people that maybe they lost their jobs and were looking for a new profession. Maybe they are a professional helper already, but they do it without really healthy, clean boundaries. So they're always harming themselves in some way, or all of those different circumstances where people want to help in a professional context rather than, maybe get paid for that work rather than just helping and bleeding out all the time. So created that, as I mentioned, already did 5 trainings, about to run the 6th one in September, by the way. And that was specific for those nurturers because I know that they get so incredibly out of alignment as the need escalates. So when you're in a life and everybody around you is falling down, the nurturer is extremely vulnerable. They're the ones, and this is why I say it's common in the truth community, but it also can be very uncommon and hard to find, is that when you're suffering, they don't turn their back. They don't just go, give you some spiritual label that you're this and you're that, and then you'll work it out. You'll get over it. This too shall pass. All this oh, my brain just went to the best meme when somebody's hanging by their fingernails from a cliff and the guy goes, something to the effect of, it'll all work out. And then the guy says, can I swear on your podcast?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the guy says, fuck you. Like this, right? It's just...
Another weird thing, literally just yesterday, Kelly asked, can I swear? And she said the exact 2 words afterwards.
There you go. I must be picking up her vibe in this chair or something. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. So the nurturers, they don't turn away. They cannot stand it. They feel pain and they feel the other's pain. They have the generosity of spirit to have empathy.
Yeah.
Not sympathy and pity is the hope, because those are shadows of that same archetype. And so it makes the world a better place. But that means that the task of the nurturer and the need for the nurturer to be clean and coming from love and not all the hidden nuanced fears is more important than ever.
I could imagine that people who are embodying the nurturer archetype really end up burning out if they're not careful. Do you find that pretty often?
Exactly. And that's why I created a training called Get Off the Nurturer's Pendulum Swing. So the tendency in the shadow of that archetype is that you see the need, you answer the call, you show up like a superhero, you give your all, and then all of a sudden you got nothing and you crash and you burn. Maybe it's your health, relationships, whatever it is. Same thing. Like could be any number of different.
I found this in myself a number of times.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. All of a sudden your wife wants a divorce, or all of a sudden you get a diagnosis. You look in your bank account and you can't even make the bills this month or whatever it is. Yeah. And then so you crash and you decide as a nurturer, this is what I did with my rebel as well. You decide, I'm not a nurturer. I'm not helping anybody ever again. The answer is no. I don't care what you ask me. I'm just going to say no. And then you lick your wounds and you do your best to heal and put your nurturance attention back on yourself. And you got your policies and you're all good and armored up with your boundaries, in quotation mark, if you're just hearing this. And then you're nurturing nature. It won't be suppressed. It keeps on bubbling up and it says, hey, you're wired to help people. You're wired to serve. You want to help. And then they might even go looking for someone to help. Never mind that somebody would come and ask for their help. They're going to go out on that mission. Another very dark nurture shadow that you go looking for people to help. This is not a good place to be in. And they forget, they go into amnesia and boom, they're back on the other side of the pendulum, helping everybody heroically and setting themselves up for the next crash. And they just go back and forth and back and forth. And so I have seen this for a while because I was raised by a nurturer. For one, I saw her pendulum swing in my mom. I wouldn't have ever called my mom a nurturer. And this is no takeaway from the love that I have for her. But when she was close to her deathbed, it was 2 weeks before she died. We didn't know at that time it was going to be so fast. And I said, hey, Mom, do you want to do my archetype quiz? I just thought I would love to read. And I regretted not having a good reading of my dad before he passed away as well. So, okay, I'll answer your questions. And it came up nurture. I'm like, huh? And she's like, yep, that's me. And I'm like, wow. Amazing, because she was expressing just so much of the shadow of it.
That makes sense.
And that denial, like, I'm not a helper. I'm not here for you. You're going to have to, raise that baby alone. You know that, right? I'm not looking after your kid, right?
Wow.
Like this, right? And okay, Mom, alrighty, okay. But so that's how dark it can get.
So it's about getting off of that pendulum and finding balance, recognizing the shadow for what it is and becoming aware of it and moving forward.
Well, it's so interesting you say, because everybody says balance, right? And then if I can swear, I'll say balance is bullshit.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Because balance, then you're just arguing with the forces. Then you're trying to like fulcrum it. You're trying to like, the teeter-totter's going like this. And then where's my center? Where's my center? Where's my center? There is a certain goodness in that. You're like, did I brush my teeth today before I go in and help somebody move? Think I'm going to do my teeth first. A meal. Good. That's a good thing. But if you're always just searching for balance, you got a moving target. You're going to be more in the concept of balance in your mind that you've constructed than you are with reality that's there right in front of you. And there are times to get totally out of balance. Completely out of balance. It's a beautiful thing. And life happens now, especially death happens now. I don't regret 1 second of how I showed up for my parents in their last days. And that was above and beyond. And I didn't think I could go on. There was a time where I literally thought I was going to die in that role myself. And then 10 minutes later, I found some warrior energy inside myself and I kept going anyway. So what is the parallel to everything that we've been talking about as well? Same thing when you stay on the scale of emotion, that you get off that pendulum, like completely off, not balancing the forces. You go to freedom and you have the revelation of what's real and what's true in that moment. So one of the stories that I told in a training that I gave recently on getting off the nurturer's pendulum swing was when I started to travel and I knew I was going to a third world country. The third poorest country in the world was Nepal at the time. I don't know where it ranks now. And I knew I was going to run into beggars who were very bad off compared to me, who was very well off, that I lived in. I had comfort my whole life. I was taken care of. And I was nervous and I was scared to confront that person. And then I came to a decision. I said, you know what? I'm here in service. I'm going to be working to build a school, to be a teacher in another school. I'm here to help families. I'm here to be in service. This is how I'm helping. And I also heard that beggars are often, it's a professional situation where they are handled like a prostitute is handled and maimed often.
Oh my goodness.
So they create this terrible situation. And I didn't want to support it. And I didn't want to be stuck every time somebody asked me feeling awful about myself because I wanted to give and couldn't or whatever. So I made this policy for myself. Seemed good until the first time we're walking down the street in Kathmandu and I'm approached by a beggar and he's in a very bad way and the legs are like not really there and he's dragging himself along on the, like this. And my heart just broke open. And I still did not give him anything. I lived by my policy that I had created as a nurturer. And then I went home that night and I worked to a completely different level. This was before I had all my skills, but I was still able to recognize that this policy didn't work for me and that I was going to have to turn things around and decide every single time.
In each moment. When somebody asks me, and to this day, it's such a joy because when God tells me to give, it's a beautiful thing, right? That it's a right situation. And, that it's amazing. And you're tasked. This is what we're tasked with, to be with reality, right? And decide. So then there's way more freedom in that. So that's just a little story to illustrate how policies don't work for nurturers, but that's how they often end up being. And that's why nurturers can end up being the most cruel of anybody. Wow.
They turn people away, they turn you down, and they feel like it's a boundary out of self-protection, right? The inner world is going, you're going to die, your nurturance. And then you go, oh, well, I better run from death and cut myself off like it's my arm or my leg, and I'm going to let it go. And so this is not a good path. So I feel extremely committed to helping people to get past all of the highly nuanced shadows that, because we have this, so just say no, and that's boundaries. And it's so not true.
Yeah.
I have been shocked the amount of people who've come out of the woodwork in response to this first training that I've already done, which was just a couple of hours online. People can listen to that now and get the benefit of that. And the number of people that had said to me, I didn't even know this was a thing. I didn't know this was a pattern. I thought I was the only one going through that, right?
Validating when you find it in other people too.
Right.
So
and then
validating.
You're not alone.
Right.
Yeah. It's a recognizable pattern. And once you know the negative pattern and you know the positive pattern, that was my way of working with archetypes before I had serious releasing tools, was to just assume the awakened voice of the archetype and start acting like the awakened side of the archetype rather than acting like that shadow. So yeah, that giving nature, it can be very dangerous.
So the offering that you have coming up in July, is that related to the nurture?
Exactly. Yeah. The course is called The Nurturer Cure. I'm off on a limb saying that I can cure something. Maybe the FDA is going to come after me and like, oh no, like this. Because I've seen such enormous transformations take place for people. For example, I had one client and she had problems with her son who was thinking he's the wrong gender. And she had problems with her husband who was very miserable in his way that he brought livelihood to the family. And she had problems with her art business partner that they couldn't agree on the value of things. And it was always some tension, and there was a bunch of other stuff, plus her health. And in just a few weeks of working together, she realized with my help that it was all nurturer shadows, every single situation. So she thought they had a myriad of different problems. It was one archetype, and she just went to work in that one place, and it changed everything. I was just looking at a post on Facebook, and it's her and her art business partner, and they're thriving, giving all of these art sales and classes, and doing the thing that they actually wanted to do because she solved out her nurturer archetype.
It's so interesting because it's like once you come into a different state of being, you start attracting the different state of being in other people, or like that is the former way is no longer in resonance with you. So it either has to up level itself for that individual, or it just goes away. It gets out of your life.
Well, exactly. Back to sacred purpose, and that we are in resonance with certain people for a reason. It's not random by any means. And that's a big mistake that nurturers make. They want to help everybody. They want to save humanity, right? And you know those people.
I've been there myself.
Oh, good God.
Man.
Yeah, absolutely been there. So, and as a business coach, this is also extremely relevant, that especially if you're a business you're not going to be a multinational and you're not going to be on billboards and mass marketing and all that kind of thing, then I recommend niche marketing and finding out, who are you? What are you naturally and joyfully going to do? Like, we were just kind of geeking out about podcasting. And I totally want to interview you, by the way. I wanted to put you on the spot on your own podcast. That. Yeah. And so that nurturer ends up being in that place of either at the mercy of every weirdo that comes their way and wants their help or their attention or time. And the less you know who you are and how you help, especially who you help, you are at the mercy of all of that. And people know it. And that's why it's very easy to take advantage of a nurturer. They're just sitting there. And I've been the one taking advantage of the nurturers. I know what that feels like. It's like, you're not busy. Can you help me? Yeah. Can you this? Can you that? And so by really getting sacred purpose and understanding at the core who you are, what you do, and who you help, then you narrow it down. So I can very easily, if someone comes to me and they're like, oh, the world is terrible and it really dealt me a bad thing and they're awful and I want to kill them or whatever, like I just always, projecting their blame onto others. I know it's not my purpose to help you. But if you came to me and said, I have these problems, I feel stuck, I don't know what the mystery is, I really want to be here instead. And they can vision something. They have enough generative power, they can vision a future that they want. And they love the truth. They love reality. They love freedom. They probably don't love the government so much, or the government overreach at least. And all those, and especially COVID was so good for that.
Right.
That it showed you more who your people are.
Totally did.
And who they're not. Although, you can't just say freedom community anymore. We know that's problematic. Totally. So then you can start to narrow it down. And when something comes your way, you have a point of reference. And you know your values. That's a very important part of sacred purpose, understanding that you value, like, if you can't narrow your values down to a top 3, you got some inner work to do. Because you need that reference point to decide whether you help or not, and in what way you help. And, and then I turned my profession into helping people so that for the most part, when I help people, I'm being paid for that. Mm-hmm. And not everybody has the luxury of doing their life's work for a living. But to tell you the truth, I even disagree with what I just said.
Yeah.
We almost have to.
Right.
There's no luxury. I pay for that luxury in responsibility. Mm-hmm. Every single day, everything comes down on me. Mm-hmm. It's my decision, my choice, right?
That's freedom, though.
It is freedom, and it's worth it.
And freedom and responsibility go hand in hand.
Exactly. And there's no cost of freedom, but that it's just perceived cost. So then, the ability for us to see who we are is the most important thing. And that's one of the reasons I also am making the Find Your Sacred Purpose course available with this course, because they're a really good pair. So there's some special savings. And I wanted to make sure and let your people know that are smart enough to join your private association, and maybe they're on the fence and deciding whether they want to do that or not, that if they join right now, that they'll receive 20% extra off of the Nurture Cure course.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Well, I would love to be able to talk with you again on your podcast. So I'm looking forward to that. This has been mind-blowing for me, because archetypes are something that I've became interested in when I first read The Law of One, but sort of pushed it to the side because I've come to, I won't say disagree with much of what The Law of One teaches, but just look at it in a different way. But there's something to archetypes, and this makes total sense, and it's very fascinating. I definitely find the nurturer archetype, and having engaged with the shadow aspects of that unknowingly myself, and it's really incredible. And it's just incredible, your story of healing by using archetypes. It's amazing. It's amazing. So, Beth, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you, Alec. It's been an amazing adventure. I enjoyed meeting you so much in person. And it's just been fantastic. Love this conversation. I knew it was going to be amazing.
It was awesome. It was awesome.
And so if you don't mind, I'll let people know that they can do a quiz at my website and find out in about 10 minutes where they are on the path of purpose just by answering some questions. And then you get instant results. So a lot of people have been doing that quiz lately. It's really fun. And they're like, oh my God, how did you know? And it's like, I didn't. I just know the pattern, right? And so that's a really fun way to start. And my book is The 8 Archetypes. So once you see there's a video for each of the archetypes, then you can also go and read it in detail. And so people can order that at my website. And then I wanted to let people know about my private association named the House of Free Will.
What a cool name, by the way.
Thank you.
Like, really cool name.
I was so happy with myself when I heard that. I'm like, oh, that's the one.
Yeah, that's a really cool name.
So it's a place for us to become more related than is possible in online chats and the, on the fly stuff, which is nice. But this is about more real relationships over time. It's still a baby. It was only 2021 when I first started learning about the private domain and the law and all of that kind of thing.
That's a whole nother thing that we didn't get into and we're both fascinated in.
It could be another discussion, maybe. Yeah,
right.
yeah, exactly. So I was very compelled. I thought, if this is any remedy at all, let's do it. And I really do firmly believe that people living and acting in the private is what has afforded me great freedom. So in the 4 years, no one showed up to tell me what to wear on my face or what to put in my body or how to work with my people or what to charge or any of that stuff, right? I realize I'm fairly relatively immune until next level tyranny when they do knock on your door. And I hear actually in Canada, they were knocking on some doors as a drill. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. But the more people dissolve the conditioned belief that any of these men and women have the right to tell them what to do and stop engaging with reality that way and start engaging in the private amongst men and women, that all goes away.
It becomes insignificant.
Right.
Yeah. And it's not a fight either.
Right. It's not a fight. It's not a fight.
Right. We're just creating, doing our little thing for the betterment of our people. And so that's amazing. And we have all kinds of solutions oriented workshops. I bring people in. We've had Amanda Vollmer and lots of law stuff. I'm a little bit less focused. I feel like I kind of got to the bottom of that bucket in that respect. But, whether it's to do with your health, we've done somatics relationships, we've done cell salts workshops, we've done, did I say relationships? I meant workshops. So in a lot of different, I'm all solutions, just bring on the solutions, something that works. We did a creativity workshop with Matt Presti. That was so fun.
Amazing.
A creative drive. That was off the charts for me. The results of it, I geared up in a big way and started just outputting it at a totally new level.
Wow.
And so, we have regular workshops and fellowship where people get together and discuss things. We had a short Star Trek episode, a couple of fellowships, because there's one, Mark Archer compares the Bible in Star Trek episodes. I never thought I would be watching Star Trek for a living. It was so fun, really fun. When I say for a living, it is mostly in service. It's by donation at this point. And, but it's supported enough that I can hire my assistant to run it. And I know that any baby, you have to nurture it for a long time. Speaking of nurturance, and I'm willing to do that so that people can have more of a relationship than is possible otherwise, and find that family. It can be a lot of, castaways and strays, and but we're like-minded. We're all on the same page. So it's a beautiful thing. It's by application only. You can't just click to sign up. So you apply, and then that's accepted, and then there's an agreement that you need to accept and understand. It's all about self-responsibility.
We have the same thing with ours too, so I totally get it. Yeah.
Nice. Well, you are most welcome as a guest in the House of Free Will.
Thank you.
At any time. That. That'd be really fun.
Awesome. Okay, so to reiterate again, for those who want to join Beth's course that she's coming out with in July, The Nurture's Cure, and I love the title. Who cares what the FDA says or does?
Thank you.
If you join the Way Forward membership, you get 20% off. And everything else that Beth mentioned, her book, The House of Free Will, coolest name ever. And then also the quiz that she has, that will all be linked in the show notes and you can find it there. And this was awesome. Thank you so much, Beth.
Thank you, Alec. I'm super honored to be here.